"This is my dwelling place forever. Here have I chosen to live," sings the psalmist. There are parts of earth which have been claimed by heaven, mountains and valleys and islands. One such would be Lindisfarne, the Holy Isle. There, this great man found contact with heaven, Aidan. Now his story is actually quite fascinating. One can actually associate him with the Gospel, because the Gospel does indicate that one could have a light well hidden, never seen. And this was his case. For a good while he was completely hidden on that other holy isle of Iona. He was deeply embedded in the monastic life, and whatever he was first and foremost a monk, a lover of Jesus, and therefore of quietness with him. What happened? It was the time of that wave of evangelization coming from two directions. A historic note to explain what was going on and the complexity of the issue. St. Aidan was the leader of the Iona mission, and this was responsible for bringing Christianity to most of northern, midland and eastern England. At first, it seemed that northern England would be converted by Roman missionaries from Canterbury. They had landed with Augustine in 597, sent by Pope Gregory the Great. When King Edwin of Northumbria was baptized by Bishop Paulinus, who had come to him from Kent. But in 1633, Edwin was killed in battle by the Welsh king Cadwallon. Paulinus accompanied Edwin's widow and his children south to Kent, and only a single missionary, James the Deacon, remained at work in the north. In 635, the Northumbrian prince Oswald defeated and killed Cadwallon and restored Northumbrian independence. Oswald, however, had spent his exile at the Celtic monastery of Iona, off the island of Mull in Scotland, where he was baptized. He now asked his former hosts to send him a bishop for his people. They chose a monk of austere life, who, expecting too much from the pagan Northumbrians, soon gave up in despair. On his return, he was criticized by a fellow monk, but this was the Aidan of this day, who thought he should have expected less and done more. Aidan was accordingly sent in his stead to see what he could do. He was consecrated bishop before his departure, and on arrival in Northumbria, he established his seat and a monastery on the tidal island of Lindisfarne, from where he undertook missionary journeys all over Northumbria, till his death in 651. Now, there is a problem because we have these two strands, the Celtic and the Roman. His religious allegiance did in fact create a problem for the new English church. Like the rest of the Iona community, Aidan held St. Columcille, Columba, the founder of Iona, who by the way had been in this area, in Kells, in great veneration. And he celebrated Easter according to Columba's manner of calculating it. This had once been the practice of Rome and the West, but owing to the pagan Saxon invasion of England, the Celtic Christians had been cut off from and had fallen out of step with their continental brethren. But now the conversion of England had been begun from Rome, and Wessex, Kent and East Anglia celebrated Easter in the Roman fashion, while Northumbria, followed by Mercia and Essex, celebrated Easter in the Celtic fashion. Aidan himself refused to change, and his prestige was sufficient to shelve the question for his lifetime. In spite of this difference, Aidan was held in great respect by the Roman bishops, as he was by all who knew him. He cared nothing for externals. He built only a thatched wooden church on Lindisfarne. He lived an austere life. He was never prevented by worldly rank, never perverted from speaking his mind, and he was approachable by all. He was always more monk than bishop. And Bede the Venerable says of him, he was conspicuous for his discretion and adorned with other virtues too. We see in Aidan two poles. This light could well have remained hidden, and he could never have been heard of, just burning for Jesus. But St. Thomas Aquinas does teach that it is superior to shed light than just to burn on one's own. That is to say that if the burning, the lighting, can have an effect, it is all the more glorious. It is actually what the Lord did. Now, he was free because he was anchored in the will of God, and the will of God therefore could move him out of a comfort zone and into a shedding of light. But he always returned back to base, and indeed his base was with him. He carried solitude insofar as he had in his soul the place of encounter with Jesus Christ. With regard to one thing, it is to be noted that it is a constant factor in the Christian annals of sanctity that souls who love Jesus Christ love solitude as well, always in balance and in proportion to the indications of the will of God in their case. But they love to come back to base. and for some it has been the all, hence the seeking of places of solitude and protection of the same. This is still the case. Monks and nuns create places where heaven has a claim on earth, and where only heaven is thought of and is ministered to directly. For them, all the rest is an accidental overflowing, because the optic is glorifying God and allowing Him to be honoured by some parts of earth, therefore claim the whole planet for Him. But what is happening in our day, at least in the West, is that we are playing hide and seek. I remember actually when only at university in the early 70s being struck by something that happened. The Catholic Society of the university was that Lent going to go on retreat. It was to a monastic island that actually had a link with the Celtic Church, Corley, in the south of Wales, off Tenby. So off we went. It would have been in 1974, and I was moved. The boat journey on the rough water there in February, whenever it was, Lent anyway, and getting there, and the isolation and the audible sound of silence, the otherness, and the bells in the heart of the night. 3:15. Past 3. The night office, it was very moving. And I asked if I could spend a time in community the following holiday. It was actually Easter, therefore, Holy Week and Easter, fortnight, and I was moved again. But my puzzlement was huge when I found that on a Sunday afternoon there was a noise coming from the heart and hearth of the community. It was, in the chapter room itself, the goggle box. And I thought to myself, all this effort, historic effort, to construct in a part of the earth that doesn't belong to earth, in the heart actually of the sea itself, a monastic island where God can reign, and what happens? One brings in the world and enthrones it. That would explain how eventually in the following summer I spent a month in La Trappe in France. But then, years later, that same gogglebox found its way into La Trappe, very controlled, but nevertheless it was there, and the same effect followed. Noise in the hearth of the community. Now that is one thing, but we are another. The structure of the soul is the same. The love of Jesus, by nature, is a lover of quietness, and should be its own defence with regard to whatever the present version of the Trojan horse is. It has no sense to be so much in need of the umbilical cord as to go, for instance, to bed with the smartphone on, just to be sure that we're fully aware of all that's happening on the other side of the planet that we have actually left. We belong to heaven if we're consecrated. Let us allow heaven to have us, and not willingly come back to words and words and more words until we die, saturated by messages that we didn't have